Good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon's edition of the Rich Urban Show. I am your host, Richard Urban, coming to you from historic Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. Tonight's installment is We Do Not Concede or Consent. Well, there was a massive and plural massive rallies throughout the country and a massive rally here in D.C. Tens of thousands, I'd say 30 to 50,000 or more, rallied to support President Trump. And well, that we should rally. And Stacey and I were there. Sadly, afterwards, some people leaving were beat up by so-called protesters. I guess they were actually just mobs of people hanging out. Unfortunately, I didn't hear the D.C. mayor condemn that or anybody else. But on to the main point. We do not concede or consent. I'd like to start today's episode with a reading of Scripture. This reading is from the Daily Inspiration. If you're not a subscriber, I suggest you go to inspiration.visionroot.org or just visionroot, visionroot.org. And on the right side here, you can sign up to get the inspiration by emails 6 days a week. So this is from Chun Chung Gyung, which is the collected writings of Reverend Sun Myung Moon, page 1919. For this reason, when the era of the Pacific civilization draws near, everybody must become one. Then we can explore outer space. Unless people become one, they would even fight over the ownership of the sun, with everyone claiming that right. They would ask who the master of the starry realm is, and they would all claim to be the one. They're bound to fight among each other. Our sun is about 1.3 million times larger than the earth. How could human beings who don't even amount to a tiny speck claim to own this vast entity? The universe would roar with laughter. A unified world is bound to appear in the era of the Pacific civilization. That is why everything must be overhauled. Democracy in America does not work, and neither does communism. That is why the head-wing ideology known as Godism must appear in this age. And I made some comments here, so I'm going to read those. This is very similar to the Rima from 3 days ago. Godism is a God-centered thought taught by Reverend Sun Myung Moon. At the core of that is the teaching of absolute sexual ethics that I've been covering in my 10-part series on the Richard Urban Show. You can also find that at visionroot.org under blog. You can find the teaching of the original root substance of the principle, the teaching of the Unification Movement of Reverend Moon here. So we see a vast amount of voter fraud occurring throughout the nation especially the states of Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, also possibly in Arizona. So what has happened in these states? They were counting the votes. Every single one of them, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, they stopped counting in the middle of the night. Gee, why would they do that? Would it be to try to find some extra votes for mail-in ballots? And that's only one of the problems. Then they find out that Dominion voting machines actually literally change ballots from Trump to President Trump to Biden. And this happened in Wisconsin, and they caught it because the traditionally extremely Republican county, and it gone 70% for Biden. They said, wait a minute, something's wrong here. So if one voting machine can, quote unquote, glitch and switch 6,000 votes, couldn't any Dominion voting machine? Probably maybe others too, but Dominion voting machines particularly, which are used in most all of the contested states, switch votes. Also, it was reported that there was an upload to Dominion voting machines in Georgia the night before the election. That's not supposed to happen. Why are they even connected to the internet? So this is incredibly crazy. So it's not just one kind of fraud, not only the mail-in ballots, which certainly are huge fraud, and then 700,000 ballots were not allowed to be observed in Pennsylvania. No observers. Imagine, flip that around. If it was Biden, and the same thing had happened to, candidate Biden, would he just say, oh, everything's fine? Yeah, I was winning, but now I lost. Oh, well, whatever. We couldn't get any observers in there? Oh, no, not to worry. Everything's fine. Our fine, upstanding observers. Lack of observers. This is insane. So the rallies were really amazing. They had a lot of speakers. For instance, Vernon Jordan, the state representative from Georgia, the new representative from South Carolina, I believe his name's Madison Graham, I believe. He spoke. A young lady from Colorado, she spoke, who's a new congresswoman there, and many, many others. So this is definitely a breath of fresh air for Congress because, it's not just a Republican or Democratic thing, but, certainly the Republican side needs reviving as well. But, especially, though, we see that there is this massive fraud occurred. So how do we get here? Well, remember back in March, we had the COVID crisis. Well, it actually started January 13th, on the same day that the mothers defeated the evil New Jersey legislature, wanted to jam the stripping religious exemptions down their throat. On that very same day, the first case of COVID in the U.S. was reported. Also, we see that at that time, there was, and in March, April, a growing movement for, all these COVID restrictions. And now we find out, they keep saying, 228,000 people died, we have this great surge. But the fact is that deaths have returned to the regular level of deaths. So it's crazy to keep saying, we have lots of COVID. Why don't they say, we have lots of flu. We have lots of people have a cold this year. Some people got pneumonia and died. No, it's a fraud. And I've been saying that clearly. As you know, my series you'll find at visionroot.org under blog, the great fraud, the COVID-19 agenda. So out of that came the saying, or is the saying, we do not consent. We don't consent to wearing masks. We don't consent to having forced vaccination. So this is actually a continuum. Forced vaccinations. What did Cuomo do? What did the governor of California do? Forced vaccinations. This has been in the pipeline now for several years, especially 2016 and on. So then we had we do not consent. So the mask wearing, first they said you don't need a mask, then you said you do need a mask, then they said you do, you don't, you do. The fact of the matter is, still there's no proof that masks do anything. It's a means of social control. As I pointed out in my other blogs, it's even pointed out on like the WHO website that the reasons for wearing masks are, look it up yourself, in order to make people more compliant to regulations. And what kind of regulations would those be? Well, look what happened now. They said, no, it's happened in Pennsylvania and Michigan for sure, and also in other states, I believe, but I know it happened in Michigan, Pennsylvania. They said, no, you can't come in. COVID restrictions, don't come in. No observing ballots. And when they did go in, they were 6 feet away. In fact, they were even 30 and up to 150 feet away. Hello, can anybody see what's happening from 150 feet away? Why would you not want people to see what was happening? Is there any way to validate who cast those 700,000 ballots in Pennsylvania? Tell me, Mr. Biden, tell me Biden supporters or Trump supporters or anyone else, is there any way to validate who cast those ballots? Once they open the signature envelope, first of all, it's dubious they even checked the signature properly, as we have many reports that they didn't. Second of all, that's hardly a security measure. Just someone signing a signature. How effective is that? 50%? 60%? In fact, 10% effective? That's crazy. So it's open to massive fraud anyway. And then, even for those that were sent in, there was no observers. So how could they ever know if those ballots are valid or not? Correct me if I'm wrong. Once the ballot's out of the signature envelope, how the heck do you know whose ballot it is? It could be from your dog, your cat. It could be from anybody. Put the shoe on the other foot. If this is Mr. Biden, would he be satisfied with that? Hey, whose ballots are these? I don't know. Hey, where are the signature envelopes? Did you check them? Yeah, we checked them. Sort of, I guess. No, we didn't check them. Who knows if they checked them? It's complete. So this is one fraud to another. Vaccine fraud, COVID fraud, election fraud. This is not something that just happened. As Mayor Giuliani was saying, it's a massive planned fraud. And even Joe Biden had the Freudian slip. We have the most massive fraud machine in the nation.
Secondly, we're in a situation where we have put together, and you guys did it for our administration, the President Obama's administration before this. We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
We have the massive fraud organization in the nation. I mean, maybe he meant to say anti-fraud, but maybe it's kind of a Freudian slip there. The most massive fraud organization in the country. Ah, yes, Mr. Biden. Yes, you do. So this is really absolutely crazy. So no, we don't comply to have forced vaccinations. We don't comply to have mask mandates, and we certainly don't concede an election that is full of fraud. I don't think anybody who's honest would agree that this was a straightforward election. And the states, those state legislatures, which are all of the contested states except Nevada, are controlled by Republicans. They need to send electors that represent the will of the people. If it's highly questionable that 700,000 votes suddenly appeared for Mr. Biden, then they cannot certify those electors. If there's unless there's, they like fraud, and I'm sure they don't. So the Constitution says that the state legislatures have the sole authority to send the electors for the president. So they need to send electors that are loyal to the person the people elected. That would be Donald J. Trump. In Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, and in Georgia, all those places have serious problems where suddenly counts were stopped, and suddenly there was statistically impossible reversals of ballots. Suddenly, you see, where even hundreds of thousands of votes suddenly disappeared from counting and switched to Biden. All these states, first of all, they need to hand recount the ballots, but even that doesn't get at the real thing. Because if you hand recount a bunch of fraudulent ballots, it proves nothing. Ballots that cannot be proven to be legitimate have to be thrown out. If necessary, they could take a new election using only voting machines. Hello! And in some rare instances could accept an absentee ballot. If someone is literally in the hospital or something like that. Not just anybody for any reason getting absentee ballot. We can see this is open to massive fraud. The whole voting system needs to be redone. It's not just about President Trump. This moment it is, but there's many other elections. In fact, in 2018, the group Stop the Steal was started in Broward County, Florida. When lo and behold, suddenly they had the elections. Then after the election, suddenly the ballots changed. The same thing happened in California. Oh, suddenly were they allow in Washington State 3 or 4 weeks after election to still have ballots come in? How ridiculous is that? If they are going to accept any mail ballots, some states stopped them the day before the election as the last day, to have them come in. And there were so many things wrong. And in Pennsylvania, already that's going to be thrown out, where the Democratic Attorney General unilaterally changed election rules saying, they could count votes that came in later. But the biggest thing is, in my opinion, the fact that 700,000, not 7,000 or 70,000, 700,000 votes, holy crap, were counted with no observers. They blocked the observers. Why would they block the observers? Oh, it was COVID-19. Bull crap. That was a plan all along. That's ridiculous. What do you think? We were born under a cabbage leaf yesterday? Get a life. That's ridiculous. And if anybody is a Biden supporter who doesn't think that these things are suspicious, I say you're disingenuous. You're not honest. You would want, if your candidate won the election honestly, you would want everything analyzed. I ran for DC Council in DC. No, I didn't win. But if suddenly they said, oh, I won, even though I only got 10,000 votes, and suddenly they stopped counting, and now I had 30,000, I wouldn't want that. You know what I mean? I would want actual votes, not fraud. So if people don't want that, then they're not honest people. And we know Mr. Biden isn't honest. All this, he never has addressed any of his connection with China. He never addressed any of the all the emails that said he got money from his family, and it's well known that he did get money from his family. It's well known he admitted that he fired prosecutors who were looking into his family. That's even not contested at all. So back to the election thing, I'm talking about the reason I bring that up, honesty, integrity. This is way past just President Trump, although that is an issue at hand. So the legislators need to get some balls and step out and say, we're going to elect the correct electors. And that is totally in the Constitution. There is no law, no rule that says that the electors have to vote for the supposed popular winner. I say supposed because of his massive fraud, it's not actually the winner. And in fact, they'd have to have their head examined if they were going to choose electors that don't represent the will of the people in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin and in Georgia. Also in Arizona, there's questions about what's going on there. But it's clear, very clear in Pennsylvania, very clear in Wisconsin, very clear in Georgia. There's so many irregularities. Places where people normally vote like at rates of 25 or 30%. You know, more than 100% of the people voted. Well, amazing. And 98% voted for Biden. Isn't that something? Oh, it's just a coincidence. All these things have to be looked into. And where ballot authenticity cannot be proved, i.e., no observers, those ballots have to be thrown out. And you know what? If the courts won't do it because they say it's a job of legislature, I agree. Legislature, do your job. In Pennsylvania, in Georgia, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Arizona, in Nevada too. Do your job. Do you want to be known as a state of massive fraud and corruption? Everybody knows in their uncle that Philadelphia election system is corrupt. People have already gone to jail in Philadelphia for election fraud. So don't tell me, oh, everything was wonderful. Also, as I mentioned last time, Mark Zuckerberg, yes, the very wonderful person who censors you on Facebook, funded $10 million, not even his foundation, him and his wife personally, to support election. This is almost laughable if it wasn't serious. To support more polling sites and election judges in Pennsylvania. That's a ridiculous conflict of interest. At the same time, you have everybody and their uncle hates President Trump. The never Trumpers hate President Trump. Democrats hate President Trump. What is this? You know he's doing something right. And you know I do say this is end of times. And finally, on to my final point. You know, what has been going wrong with Christianity in the last 3-4 decades? You know, really even okay, we'll say especially the last 4+ decades. Well, I'll tell you one thing, you know, that's been going wrong, you know, in Christianity the last 4 decades. And that is they haven't even looked into the truth that has been brought by Reverend Sun Myung Moon. He's brought a new expression of truth, like I said in the introduction today. And, you know, people went la-di-da, either they ignored what he's saying, and he said, you know, that neither, you know, communism or democracy is on the right track. And, you know, now we've been thrown into the fire of perdition, or whatever you want to call it. People really have to see what's going on. He said it's not optional whether you want to, you know, decide about this truth. Hello, it's not optional. The whole thing's crashing down around your head. Maybe you need to look into the fact that God has actually provided a new framework of truth. And no, Jesus didn't come to die. That wasn't his mission. And so many other things that you need to know about. And no, the fallen man wasn't eating an apple, for Pete's sake. Why have people not listened to this truth? Well, I'm talking about it on my show. I'm talking about the inspiration. But everybody and their uncle needs to know about this. A lot of people have said, la-di-da, we're just fine. Well, we're not just fine. Why the heck is the whole nation in this mess? I would posit that a lot of it is because we didn't listen to what God was saying. And we're completely disunited. People are tripping over themselves. Shoot, I was at a meeting recently. And some people were saying, in fact, it was a Tea Party meeting. Somebody, I guess they didn't know I was there, was saying, oh, what about this moon thing? And I don't know what they were talking at first. And I don't think they were talking about Alex Mooney. No, they were talking about the fact that I was posting different things, about, and interviewing different candidates on my show. And some of the old, staid, crotchety old Republican guys don't like that. Maybe the Democrats don't like it either. Why not? Shoot. What's the problem? They don't, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Wake up, everybody. Anyway, so I kind of had to get on for my semi-rant this evening. But do not concede, President Trump. We love you. We're behind you. And Christians, let's get our act together. Hello! It's a time of second advent, but Jesus isn't going to float down on some clouds. How about reading the, divine principle? How about studying the original or substance of the divine principle? It's right on our website, visionroot.org. How about enlightening yourself? Check it out. Okay, how about finding out about the blessing of marriage? Do subscribe to Daily Inspiration. And do not concede and do not consent. So, I am your host, Richard Irvin. I'm coming to you from historic Harper's Ferry. Do be blessed. We love you, and we'll see you next time.